I heard my mother-in-law yell, "This is for all the trouble you caused, you demon," her daughter Jeline screamed, "and this is for everything else." They were beating my husband with rope, but they thought it was me. I watched it all from the dark corner, recording on my phone. My name is Zara, and I have an identical twin sister, Nyla. We look exactly the same, like two drops of water, but our lives were very different. I was always the stronger one, the one who spoke up, even if it got me into trouble. Nyla was gentle, kind, and always tried to please everyone. When we were 17 years old, a boy attacked Nyla. I didn't think, I just acted. I broke his arm. They said I had an impulse control disorder, whatever that means. The doctors called it a mental illness, but I just felt like I was protecting my sister. So they put me in Thornfield Haven Psychiatric Center near Baltimore, Maryland. I spent 12 long years there. My room was small, barely 85 square feet. There wasn't much to do, so I trained every single day. I ran in place, did push-ups, sit-ups, anything to make my body strong. I turned myself into a powerhouse of lean, hard muscle. My only worry, my only thought was Nyla. I knew she was gentle, too gentle for this world. I worried about who would protect her now that I was locked away. Nyla visited me sometimes. She was always smiling, trying to make me feel better, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. After 3 years, she told me she was getting married to a man named Marcus Grayson. He worked at a warehouse. I met him once. He seemed nice, but something about his eyes made me uneasy. Nyla moved into his family's dilapidated house in the Southmere district. It was an old, ugly place, she told me, and she had to live with Marcus, his tyrannical mother Bernadette, and his divorced sister Jeline. I had a bad feeling in my stomach, but I was locked up. What could I do? The visits slowly changed. Nyla started looking tired. She would wear long sleeves even in summer. Her smiles became weaker, more forced. She would talk about how hard it was at Marcus's house, how Bernadette always found fault with her cooking, how Jeline would make mean jokes. She never said much about Marcus directly, just that he was often tired or stressed from work. I would try to ask, "Nyla, are you okay? Is everything all right?" She would just nod, look away, and change the subject. My heart ached for her, trapped in that house with those people. I felt helpless. Then things got much, much worse. After 8 long years of marriage, Nyla came to visit me, and she couldn't hide it anymore. Her body was a map of bruises, old yellow marks mixed with fresh purple welts. There were circular finger grip marks on her arms, like someone had grabbed her hard. Thin belt whip lines ran across her skin. She had tried to cover them with makeup, but it was useless. When I saw her, my breath caught in my throat, my gentle sister covered in pain. I reached out and touched her arm softly. She flinched. "Nyla," I whispered, my voice shaking with anger and fear. "Who did this to you? Tell me." She started to cry, silent tears running down her bruised cheeks. "It's everyone, Zara, Marcus, Bernadette, Jeline." Her voice was barely audible. She told me about the daily beatings, how they would hit her if her chores weren't perfect, or if she spoke up, or sometimes for no reason at all. She said they starved her, giving her only small portions, sometimes nothing at all, while they ate big meals in front of her. She was forced to do all the housework, including hand-washing the entire family's laundry every single day. The emotional abuse was relentless. Bernadette would call her lazy, useless, a parasite. Jeline would laugh at her, saying Marcus could do better. My blood ran cold. "And Marcus?" I asked, my voice tight. "Does he do this too?" Nyla just nodded, tears flowing freely now. He sometimes comes home drunk. He gets angry. He hits me." The rage started to build in me, a fire I hadn't felt in 12 years. But then she told me something that made that fire turn into ice. "It's Kaya too, Zara." Kaya, her 4-year-old daughter, my sweet little niece. Jeline's son Dexter, he's 6, he bullies Kaya, he hits her, pushes her, and Jeline and Bernadette just laugh. They tell him to show Kaya who's boss. Nyla sobbed, her body shaking. "And Marcus, last week Kaya spilled a little juice. He slapped her across her face." That was it. My mind went blank then clear. A 4-year-old child, my niece, slapped. Something inside me crystallized into ice-cold resolve. The Zara who broke a boy's arm for Nyla was back. But this time I had 12 years of quiet training, of observing, of planning. I wouldn't just break an arm, I would dismantle their whole cruel world. "Nyla," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. "We are going to switch places." Her eyes widened, full of fear and confusion. "What, Zara? No, they'll know?" "No, they won't," I said. "We are identical, we just need to practice. You will stay here safe in my room. You will pretend to be me. Nobody will know, and I will go back to that house posing as you. I will deal with them." Nyla was scared. She kept saying it was too risky, that they would hurt me, but I looked at her bruises. I thought of Kaya's small, slapped face. "They have hurt you enough, Nyla. They have hurt Kaya enough. It ends now." I started to explain my plan, how we would practice walking, talking, everything. We spent the next few visits going over every detail. Nyla was terrified, but also desperate. The thought of being safe, even for a short time, was a powerful pull. The facility staff rarely checked closely. They saw Nyla coming and going, assumed it was Zara's sisterly visit. We would make the switch during one of these visits. The day came. My heart was pounding like a drum against my ribs. Nyla arrived, looking more scared and fragile than ever. We went into my small room. We hugged, we cried. "Be careful, Zara," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, just be careful." "You be careful too, Nyla," I replied, looking into her eyes, seeing my own reflection. "Rest, be free here, even for a little while." We swapped clothes. She wore my worn-out facility gown. I put on her simple, faded dress. We adjusted our hair, practiced our walk one last time. Then I walked out of that room, pretending to be Nyla. My chest felt tight, but a fierce determination burned inside me. The world outside felt strange after 12 years, but my focus was sharp. I was going home to a house that was not my home to fight a battle that should have never been Nyla's. I took the bus to the Southmere district. The houses were run down, paint peeling, yards full of junk. The Grayson house was the worst of them all. It looked even more broken than Nyla had described. The front door was loose on its hinges. I pushed it open. The smell hit me first, stale food, dampness, and something else, something sad and old. The house was dark, messy, and silent. Hello. I called out, my voice sounding a little different to my own ears, more like Nyla's soft tone. No answer. Then I saw her, little Kaya, my niece. She was cowering in a dark corner of the living room, a tiny figure clutching a headless doll. Her hair was messy, her clothes dirty. Her eyes, when she finally looked up, were wide with fear. She didn't even approach me, her own mother. She just stared like a frightened animal. My heart twisted. This was what they had done. This was the result of their cruelty. The rage which had been simmering ignited fully. Kaya, I said softly, crouching down, trying to make my voice gentle like Nyla's. It's Mama, come here, sweetheart. She didn't move, she just watched me ready to bolt. It took all my strength not to rush to her, not to show my true anger. I knew I had to play the part. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. Jeline walked into the living room, carrying a dirty plate. She stopped short when she saw me. Well, look who decided to come out of her hole, she sneered. Finally doing something useful, are we, Nyla? Get to the laundry, it's piling up. She didn't even notice the fear in Kaya's eyes or how I was looking at Kaya. She just saw Nyla, the servant. I stood up slowly. Jeline, I said, my voice steady. Where is Bernadette? She rolled her eyes. In the kitchen, stuffing her face as usual. Don't worry about her, just get to work. She turned to go, but then her son Dexter came running into the room, a smirk on his face. He saw Kaya. Hey, crybaby, he yelled and went to kick Kaya's small leg. Before he could touch her, my hand shot out. It moved faster than he could react. I grabbed his ankle midair. He let out a yelp of surprise, losing his balance, but I held him firm. His foot hung in the air, his face twisted in confusion and pain. Jeline spun around. What was that, Nyla? She shrieked. You dare touch my son? She rushed towards me, her hand raised, ready to slap me. I didn't flinch. As her hand came down, I caught her wrist. My grip was like a steel clamp, firm and unyielding. Jeline gasped, her eyes wide. She tried to pull her hand away, but I held it. She struggled, her face turning red. She couldn't move. She looked shocked, scared. This wasn't the Nyla she knew. Don't you ever try to hurt that child again, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Or me. I released her wrist, giving it a small twist at the end. She stumbled back, rubbing her arm, staring at me with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Just then, Bernadette waddled into the room, attracted by the noise. She was holding a half-eaten sandwich. What in God's name is going on here? She demanded, her eyes narrowing on me. Nyla, what have you done to Jeline and Dexter? She saw Jeline rubbing her wrist, Dexter whimpering on the floor. She attacked me, Mama, she grabbed Dexter. Jeline cried out. Bernadette glared at me, her face turning purple. You ungrateful wretch, how dare you lay a hand on my family? She grabbed a feather duster from a nearby table and swung it at my back repeatedly, hitting me with soft, thudding blows. You think you can come into my house and disrespect us? I'll teach you a lesson. I let her hit me a few times just to gauge her strength. It was nothing. Then, as she brought the duster down again, I snatched it out of her hand. My movement was swift and decisive. Bernadette let out a surprised yelp, her hand empty. With a sudden sharp crack, I snapped the feather duster in two pieces. The sound echoed in the quiet room. I dropped the pieces at her feet. Bernadette froze. Her eyes were wide, her mouth agape. She looked from the broken duster to me, then back again. Jeline and Dexter were silent, watching. Kaya, still in the corner, was also staring, her fear slowly mixing with a tiny spark of wonder. I looked at all of them one by one, Bernadette, Jeline, Dexter. Then I looked at Kaya. I took a deep breath. Starting today, I declared, my voice clear and firm, this house is going to have rules. My statement hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. They stared at me dumbfounded. They had never heard Nyla speak like this, never seen her act like this. They didn't know I wasn't Nyla at all, and they were about to learn a very painful lesson. The next few hours were a strange mix of their confusion and my quiet revolution. They didn't hit me again. They didn't ask for laundry. They just watched me, suspicious and wary. I went to Kaya slowly, gently. I sat beside her. It's okay, baby girl, I whispered, holding out my hand. After a long moment, she slowly, tentatively put her small hand in mine. It was a victory. I spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning Kaya, finding some food for her in the neglected kitchen and just sitting with her, letting her get used to my presence. The house was still squalid, but Kaya felt a little safer. That night, Marcus stumbled home drunk around 12:30 a.m. I heard his heavy footsteps, his slurred curses, the clinking of bottles in his bag. Bernadette and Jeline were already asleep or pretending to be. I was sitting in the living room, waiting. Kaya was asleep in a small, cramped bed in the corner of my Nyla's room. I had made sure the door was locked. Marcus walked into the living room, swaying. He squinted at me. Nyla, what are you doing up? He slurred. Waiting for your master? Come here, give me my dinner. He threw his dirty bag onto the floor. You're late, I said, my voice calm, flat. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. And whose fault is that, little wife? Don't you dare talk back to me. He took a step towards me, his hand raised, ready to strike, the same hand that had slapped my innocent niece. I met his gaze unflinching. As his hand came down, I moved. My left hand shot up, catching his wrist like a vice. He stopped mid-swing. His eyes widened, suddenly a little less drunk. He tried to pull away, but my grip was iron. He couldn't move his hand an inch. Let go of me, you bitch, he snarled, trying to put force into his voice. I squeezed just a little. He cried out, a sharp, surprised yell. There was a sickening pop. His wrist went limp, hanging at an unnatural angle. I had dislocated it. He screamed then, a real scream of pain, and crumpled to his knees. "My wrist, you broke my wrist, you crazy woman." I looked down at him, my face emotionless. "You slapped my daughter," I said, my voice cold. "You hit my sister, you made her starve, you made her afraid, now you will feel a fraction of that fear." He was panting, clutching his dislocated wrist, his face pale with pain and terror. "What are you talking about? What's wrong with you?" "Nothing is wrong with me, Marcus. Everything is wrong with you." I grabbed him by the hair, dragging him towards the bathroom. He cried out, but he was no match for my strength. I forced his head under the cold water in the bathroom sink. He thrashed and spluttered, trying to pull away, but I held him firm. The cold water shocked him, making him sober up fast. He was coughing, gasping for air, his eyes wild with terror. I didn't let him up until he was completely soaked, choking and sputtering. He looked at me, truly seeing me for the first time, seeing something terrifying and unknown. "Please, Nyla, stop," he begged, water dripping from his face, his hair plastered to his head. I'm sorry, sorry," I repeated, my voice like ice. "You don't know the meaning of the word." I pulled him up, dragging him back into the living room, then pushed him down onto the floor. "This is just the beginning, Marcus. Your house, your rules, all of it is about to change." He lay there, whimpering, clutching his arms, soaked and shivering. He was broken, not just physically, but his spirit was shattered. The bully was cowering. I watched him for a long moment, a cold satisfaction spreading through me. Then I went to Kaya's room, making sure she was still sleeping soundly, unaware of the terror I had just inflicted. I didn't get much sleep that night. I knew the real fight was still to come. The next morning, Bernadette and Jeline found Marcus on the living room floor, soaked, shivering, and whimpering about his wrist. They freaked out. "What happened to you, Marcus?" Bernadette shrieked. "Nyla, what have you done to my son?" Marcus pointed a trembling finger at me. She broke my wrist. "She held my head underwater." Jeline looked at me with pure hatred. "You demon, you're completely crazy. We need to call the police." I just stood there calm, letting them yell. I knew they wouldn't call the police. They had too much to hide. Instead, they took Marcus to the emergency room, leaving me alone with Kaya. I used that time to explore the house, looking for anything that could help me. I found Marcus's gambling debts hidden in a shoebox. I found old financial papers. I was looking for leverage. When they came back, Marcus had a cast on his arm. His face was pale and he wouldn't look at me directly. Bernadette and Jeline were furious, but also scared. They knew I wasn't the old Nyla. They tried to be careful around me, but their anger was bubbling. That night around 1:00 a.m., I heard soft footsteps. I was pretending to sleep in Nyla's cramped bed. I heard whispering outside the door. I could make out Bernadette's voice, Jeline's, and Marcus's. "We have to do something about her," Bernadette whispered. "She's completely lost her mind. She's dangerous." "I say we tie her up and send her to one of those places," Jeline added. "Like that sister of hers." "No," Marcus hissed, his voice full of pain and venom. "We need to teach her a lesson first, a real lesson." I heard the distinct sound of rope being uncoiled, tape ripping. My heart started to beat faster, not with fear, but with anticipation. This was it. This was their ambush. They thought they were so clever. I quietly reached for my phone, turning on the video camera. I knew I needed evidence. I placed it carefully on the nightstand, propped against a book, pointing towards the door, but hidden by a pile of clothes. I heard the doorknob slowly turn. The door creaked open. 3 dark figures slipped into the room. Marcus, Bernadette, Jeline. They had rope, duct tape, and a towel. They moved silently, thinking I was asleep. I lay still, my eyes closed, breathing evenly. Marcus crept closer to the bed. He raised the towel, ready to put it over my mouth. Just as he lunged, I moved. In a blur of motion, I kicked out with my right leg, catching him squarely in the chest. He went down with a grunt, hitting the floor hard. Bernadette screamed. Jeline yelled. They were completely surprised. Before they could react, I sprang from the bed. I grabbed the rope from Jeline's hand, twisted it around Marcus's legs, and pulled tight. He grunted in pain, trying to get up, but I was too fast. I tied his ankles together, then his wrists, expertly and quickly, using the skills I had honed in my small room for 12 years. I used the duct tape to secure his mouth shut. He thrashed, muffled cries coming from behind the tape, but he was helpless. I had tied him to the bed frame. Bernadette and Jeline were frozen, staring at me, their faces white with shock and terror. What have you done?" Bernadette stammered. Looked at them, my eyes cold. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" I said, my voice low and dangerous. "To teach Nyla a lesson, to beat her?" I pointed at Marcus, who was tied securely to the bed, whimpering. "There she is, your victim, go on." They looked at Marcus, then at me, confusion warred with their rage. But that's Marcus," Jeline gasped. "No," I said, my voice full of cruel conviction. "That's Nyla. She looks just like him now, doesn't she? Because of all the beatings, all the pain. She's changed." I knew they were seeing what they wanted to see, what their twisted minds could process. They didn't want to believe I was strong. They wanted to believe Nyla was just acting out or crazy. Bernadette looked at Marcus, really looked at him, tied and helpless. She saw her rage reflected in him. "She deserves it," she spat. "For everything she's done?" "Yes," Jeline agreed, her eyes gleaming with malice. "She deserves it." She grabbed the loose rope I had used to tie Marcus. "Wait," I said, stepping back into the shadows of the room near where my phone was recording. "You wouldn't want anyone to see what you're doing, would you? Make sure she doesn't scream too loud." Bernadette picked up the towel. "Don't worry," she snarled, her eyes fixed on the tied-up figure. "She won't make a sound." And then they began. Bernadette and Jeline, thinking it was me, thinking it was Nyla, started to beat their own son and brother. They used the rope, they used their fists. They hit him with all the anger and hatred they had felt for years, the anger they had directed at Nyla, now unleashed on Marcus. He thrashed, muffled cries and groans escaping the duct tape. He tried to tell them it was him, but they were lost in their fury, hearing only what I had told them. I watched, unseen in the dim light, my phone silently recording every single blow, every scream, every word. The horror of it, the sheer brutality of a mother and sister beating their own kin, thinking it was someone else, was sickening. But it was exactly what I needed. It was their karma delivered by their own hands. Marcus took blow after blow, his body jerking, his pleas muffled. Bernadette yelled, "This is for lying about your job, Nyla." Jeline screamed, "This is for making me clean up your mess." Their faces were contorted with evil glee and rage. They were completely unhinged. It didn't stop until Marcus was bleeding, whimpering, barely conscious. When they finally collapsed, exhausted, I stepped out of the shadows. "Are you done?" I asked, my voice chillingly calm. They looked up, panting, their faces flushed. Then they looked at the battered figure on the bed. The duct tape had come loose on one side, and Marcus's eyes were wide with a mix of terror and betrayal. He was looking at his mother and sister, then at me. He had a broken nose, blood on his face, and several deep gashes. "Nyla," Bernadette whispered, a flicker of doubt finally entering her mind. I stepped forward, pulled out my phone, and pressed stop on the recording. "No, Bernadette," I said, holding up the phone for them to see. "That's Marcus, and this is all on video." Their faces, which had been red with exertion, drained of all color. Their eyes widened in horror. Jeline gasped, putting her hand over her mouth. Bernadette stumbled back, bumping into the wall. Marcus, seeing the phone, seeing their faces, let out a desperate, broken sob. The trap was sprung. The beasts had turned on themselves. Jeline's fingers, usually so steady and precise, fumbled with the thick paper, tearing slightly at the corner. Her eyes, still wide with a mix of disbelief and fury, scanned the carefully typed document inside. I could almost see the numbers jumping out at her, the cold, irrefutable evidence of my generosity and her subsequent betrayal. Her lips moved silently, forming words I couldn't quite discern, perhaps calculating the true cost of what she had just forfeited. The air around her seemed to shimmer with a barely contained rage, a silent storm brewing behind her suddenly pale and rigid face. She clutched the papers, crumpling them slightly in her clenched fist, as if the physical act might somehow undo the reality they represented. Bernadette, on the other hand, sat utterly frozen, her gaze fixed on the envelope I had laid out for her. It was as if a powerful spell had been cast, paralyzing her. Her chest heaved with shallow, rapid breaths, and a single tear, unbidden, traced a path down her cheek, leaving a glistening trail on her flushed skin. But it wasn't a tear of sorrow for me, I knew. It was a tear of bitter disappointment, of shattered avarice. Her dream of a comfortable, easy life, financed by my supposed senility, had evaporated into thin air. The future she had so meticulously planned, the vacation home she had envisioned, the expensive car she had coveted, all of it crumbled into dust before her eyes. The vibrant pattern of the rug beneath her feet seemed to mock her, its intricate design a stark contrast to the unraveling simplicity of her greed. Marcus, still huddled, slowly reached out a shaky hand for his own envelope. He didn't snatch it or even grab it with the calculated precision his sisters might have. Instead, his fingers brushed against it tentatively, as if expecting it to burn him. When he finally opened it, his eyes, still red-rimmed and puffy, scanned the figures, and a fresh wave of despair washed over his face. He didn't rage or cry out. He just let out a soft, mournful sound, a sound akin to a wounded animal, and crumpled the papers, not in anger but in utter defeat. The realization that he had squandered not just my trust but also his own future, a future that could have been stable and secure had he simply been patient and honest, seemed to hit him with devastating force. The very fabric of his reality, already fragile, was now tearing apart at the seams. "There is no point in staring at those numbers with regret," I said, my voice cutting through their individual agonies. "The past cannot be undone. What is done is done. These documents merely serve as a formal record, a final testament to the consequences of your choices." My voice, though firm, carried a faint echo of the heartbreak I felt, a deep well of sorrow for what might have been, for the loving relationship I had always hoped to share with them. The sunlight, now lower in the sky, cast long, distorted shadows across the highly polished antique table, making it seem to stretch and twist, much like the twisted narrative they had attempted to weave around me. Jeline finally lifted her head, her eyes blazing with an unholy fire. "You're doing this because of that old hag, aren't you? Mrs. Gable, she's whispered poison in your ear for months. She's always wanted this house for herself." Her voice was raw, laced with venom, the mask of concern completely gone, revealing the true ugliness beneath. The words hung in the air, sharp and bitter, tainting the already heavy atmosphere. The scent of her expensive perfume, usually pleasant, now seemed cloying, sickly sweet with her malice. I sighed, feeling a fresh wave of weariness deep within my old bones. "Jeline, my dear, your attempts to deflect blame are as transparent as old window glass. Mrs. Gable is a true friend. She has nothing to gain from my will. She is comfortable in her own home, with her own children who actually care for her. She simply cared enough to worry when she saw the subtle changes, the increasing frequency of your visits, the way you began to speak for me, to make decisions for me. She merely confirmed what my own heart was beginning to suspect, and what you, Marcus, have now confirmed in devastating detail." The very air seemed to vibrate with the unspoken truth, echoing my words back to them. "Subtle changes?" Bernadette suddenly piped up, finding her voice again, albeit a shaky one. Her eyes, wide and almost desperate, searched my face as if trying to find a crack in my resolve. What changes? We were just trying to help. You're getting old, Aunt Me. You forget things. You were starting to get confused. Her voice ended on a shrill, hysterical note, betraying the panic that gnawed at her. She fidgeted in her chair, tugging at the cuff of her sleeve, a nervous habit I remembered from her childhood. Confused, Bernadette. I countered, my gaze unwavering, my tone laced with a quiet, steely resolve. Do you remember the incident 4 months ago when I left my favorite cookbook on the kitchen counter? A book filled with my mother's handwritten recipes, a cherished family heirloom, its pages brittle with age and splattered with countless joyful cooking experiments. You helped by organizing my shelves, and when I asked where it was, you calmly told me I must have misplaced it, that I was forgetting things. Only a week later, I found it, hidden at the very back of a pantry shelf, tucked behind a pile of old newspapers, a place I would never, ever put it. The spine was slightly bent, the cover faintly dusty. You wanted me to believe I was losing my mind, didn't you? So you could more easily take control of my kitchen and, by extension, my entire domestic life. Bernadette turned crimson, her eyes darting away from mine, unable to hold my steady gaze. She had truly believed her little trick had gone unnoticed, or at least attributed to my supposed forgetfulness, a convenient narrative for her. The silence in the room seemed to press down on her, magnifying her discomfort. And Jeline, I continued, turning my attention to her, do you recall the time, just 2 months ago, when you insisted on taking me to my monthly book club meeting? You helped by picking me up an hour early, driving a circuitous route, making sure we arrived conspicuously late, and then telling me upon arrival, quite loudly in front of my friends, that I was late and the meeting had almost started without me. You then proceeded to joke about getting me a senior-friendly watch with extra large numbers, all while my friends exchanged worried glances. This was not about punctuality, dear. This was about subtly undermining my confidence, to plant seeds of doubt in my own mind and in the minds of my friends about my mental acuity, making me appear incompetent and in need of your guidance. Jeline bristled, a muscle twitching in her jaw. I was just trying to keep you on schedule, Aunt Me. You know how you are with time. Her voice was sharp, betraying her frustration that her carefully constructed deception was being dismantled. Her hands clenched and unclenched around the crumpled papers in her lap. I know how I am with time, Jeline, I replied calmly, my voice unwavering, yet imbued with a quiet power. I have never in my entire life been late for a book club meeting. I value punctuality deeply. Your act was not about helping me. It was about presenting a narrative of my supposed decline, making me appear incompetent to my dearest companions, isolating me further, cutting me off from the very social connections that sustain my mind and spirit. The truth of my words hung heavy, like a shroud, in the air between us. The sunlight outside, which had been bright and warm, seemed to dim slightly, as if in sympathy with the truth being unveiled, casting longer, more ominous shadows across the room. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken resentments and the bitter taste of exposed truth. The floral patterns on the wallpaper, once cheerful and comforting, now seemed to twist and contort into mocking faces, reflecting the ugliness of the moment. The silence that fell again was not just heavy, but oppressive, filled with the buzzing of their own frantic thoughts and the thumping of their exposed hearts. Each tick of the grandfather clock resonated with a hollow clang, counting the seconds of their undoing. And what about the garden, Marcus? I asked, my voice softening slightly, sensing a glimmer of vulnerability in him, a slight chance that some shred of decency remained beneath his shame. My prize-winning roses, you know how much joy they bring me, how many hours I spend tending to them, pruning each delicate stem, watering them precisely, feeding the soil with organic compost. Do you remember when you helped me by spraying them with a chemical you bought online, promising it was the best organic pesticide? And then within 2 days, every single bloom withered and died, their vibrant petals falling like heartbroken tears onto the soil, leaving only brittle brown husks? Marcus flinched visibly, drawing in a sharp breath. His eyes, still puffy from tears, looked even more sorrowful. I didn't mean to, Aunt Me. I thought it was good stuff. The website said it was amazing for all sorts of garden pests. He stammered, his voice filled with a fresh wave of self-pity and a pathetic attempt at justification, as if the internet could absolve him of his careless arrogance. It was not good stuff, Marcus, I corrected gently, but firmly, my gaze fixed on his. It was a potent herbicide designed to kill weeds, not nourish flowers. You saw me researching natural pest control methods. You knew how much I valued my organic garden, the very essence of life and growth it represented to me. Yet you chose to interfere without asking, without consulting, convinced that your quick chemical solution was superior, or perhaps simply to assert your dominance over my choices, to show me that I needed your modern interventions. It took me weeks of careful tending, of applying nurturing remedies to revive those bushes, and even now they haven't produced flowers as vibrant as they once did. That was not a mistake, dear boy. That was an act of deliberate, if perhaps misguided, control, a dismissive disregard for my wishes and my passion. My words hung in the air, weighted with the unspoken hurt of 1,000 tiny aggressions, 1,000 small acts of disrespect that had chipped away at my spirit. Each instance, seemingly minor on its own, had built up, layer upon layer, creating a thick, thorny barrier of distrust and resentment between us. Each withered rose petal had been a symbol of their slow, insidious poisoning of my peaceful existence. And then there was the matter of my old photo albums. I continued, my gaze moving back to Jeline, whose stony facade seemed to crack further under the relentless light of truth. The ones filled with sepia-toned memories of my beloved husband Thomas and your mother, when she was a little girl, her bright smile captured forever on those precious pages. You know how precious those are to me, how irreplaceable. You helped me digitize them, as you put it, by taking them away for 2 weeks. When they returned, many of the original, delicate photographs were bent, some even torn, their fragile edges frayed, and the digital copies you gave me were blurry, out of focus, and missing entire sections. When I confronted you, you simply shrugged and said with a dismissive wave of your hand, "Oh well, you can't expect perfection, Aunt Me." They're old photos, after all, bound to be a bit fragile. You treated my irreplaceable memories as if they were disposable, unimportant, just another chore to be grudgingly completed. You saw them as obstacles to your grand plan, perhaps fearing they contained clues to my unwavering resolve, to my past strength that still lived within me. Jeline's face remained impassive, a stony mask, but her eyes, when they met mine, held a flicker of cold, calculating indifference, devoid of any genuine regret or empathy. She didn't deny it, didn't apologize. It was just another piece of collateral damage in her single-minded pursuit of my estate, a small price to pay in her twisted logic. The silence that followed was heavy with this revelation, the chilling disregard for a lifetime of cherished memories, a testament to her profound lack of compassion. This systematic chipping away at my life, my autonomy, my memories, I said, my voice rising slightly, imbued with a quiet but firm power, this is what truly ages a person. This is what steals their vitality, far more than the simple passing of years. You didn't just want my money, you wanted my spirit. You wanted to render me invisible, a mere shell, so you could step in and dictate my entire existence, controlling every decision, every emotion, every breath I took. Bernadette, who had been listening with a sullen, increasingly frustrated expression, suddenly let out a sharp sigh, her patience wearing thin, her veneer of composure crumbling. Fine. So you think we're terrible, you think we're greedy, but what about all the times we actually did help? All the times we drove you to appointments or bought you groceries or stayed when you were lonely? You're just forgetting all of that, aren't you, Aunt Me? You're only remembering the bad things. Her voice was tight with indignation, a desperate, almost pathetic attempt to portray herself as a victim to rewrite the narrative. Oh, I remember those times, Bernadette, I assured her, my voice surprisingly gentle despite her outburst, a soft counterpoint to her rising hysteria. I remember every single instance, and do you know what I remember most vividly about those helpings, as you call them? The constant complaints. The sighs of exasperation, loud enough for me to hear, when I couldn't walk quite as fast as you'd like in the grocery store, my old knees aching. The thinly veiled impatience when I needed an extra minute to buckle my seatbelt, my arthritic fingers fumbling with the clasp. The way you'd check your phone every 5 minutes during our conversations, clearly wishing you were anywhere else but with your lonely old aunt, a constant reminder of your disinterest. I leaned forward slightly, my gaze piercing, unwavering. I also remember the questions, Bernadette. The probing, almost interrogative questions about my financial statements during those grocery trips casually slipped into conversation. The casual inquiries about how much the house was worth these days during drives to appointments, as if it were mere real estate, not a home brimming with life. The way you'd subtly steer conversations towards my health and my future care, every single time you stayed when I was lonely, always with an agenda hidden beneath your feigned concern. Your help, dear, always came with an unspoken price tag, always had a hidden agenda attached to it. It was never truly selfless. It was always a transaction, a deposit into your own selfish ledger. The truth of my words seemed to hit Bernadette with renewed, crushing force. Her anger deflated, leaving her looking utterly exposed and vulnerable, her face paling rapidly. She had always prided herself on her ability to mask her true intentions, to appear genuinely helpful while secretly calculating her advantage, her eyes constantly scanning for opportunities. Now that carefully constructed veneer was stripped away, revealing the calculating, opportunistic individual beneath. And the little comments, Jeline, I continued, pressing on, determined to leave no stone unturned in this painful excavation of truth, to ensure they understood the full scope of their transgressions. The seemingly innocent remarks that over time chipped away at my self-worth like water-eroding stone. Like the time I bought that lovely new silk scarf, a splash of vibrant color to brighten my wardrobe, to bring a little joy to my days, and you said with a condescending tone, "Oh, Aunt Me, that's certainly a choice, a bit flashy for someone your age, perhaps." Or when I told you about a new book I was reading, a complex historical novel, eager to share my intellectual curiosity, and you replied with a dismissive wave, "Still reading those big books, Aunt Me? Aren't your eyes getting tired? Maybe stick to magazines, they're much easier, less strain." Always subtly suggesting I was past my prime, that my interests were inappropriate, that my intellect was fading, that I should retreat into a smaller, dimmer world of your making. Jeline's face tightened, a vein throbbing faintly in her temple, a telltale sign of her inner turmoil. She probably didn't even remember those specific comments, so ingrained was her pattern of subtle denigration, her constant need to diminish others to elevate herself. For her, it was just background noise, a constant hum of dismissiveness. But for me, each one had been a tiny pinprick, slowly draining my confidence, slowly dimming the light in my own heart. "And Marcus," I said, my voice gentler once more, a faint sigh escaping my lips, "your particular brand of disrespect was perhaps the most heartbreaking because I always held out hope for you. Your mother always said you had a good heart, just a little easily led, a bit of a soft touch. But even you, dear boy, succumbed to their influence, to the lure of easy money. Remember the time I baked your favorite apple pie just for you, a special treat, knowing how much you loved the crisp crust and the sweet, spiced apples? And you took a slice, complimented it, then promptly left half of it on the plate, saying, 'Oh, I'm trying to cut down on sugar, Aunt Me. Doctor's orders, you know.' Knowing full well how much effort I put into those pies, how much love went into that specific recipe, a tangible expression of my affection for you. It was a dismissal, a rejection subtly delivered but stinging nonetheless, a deliberate slight to my efforts and my love." Marcus visibly wilted, shrinking further into his seat. He looked down at his crumpled papers, a fresh wave of shame washing over his face, dampening his already tear-streaked cheeks. He remembered the pie. He remembered my hopeful smile as I watched him eat it. And he remembered the quick, dismissive gesture that followed, designed to avoid hurting my feelings while still asserting his independence from my old-fashioned ways, his loyalty swayed by his sister's colder counsel. The silence that now enveloped the room was a living, breathing entity. It pulsed with the weight of unspoken accusations, of shattered illusions, of dreams irrevocably lost. The late afternoon light was fading quickly now, replaced by the somber gray of dusk, creeping in through the windows like a somber visitor. The colors in the room seemed to drain away, leaving everything in muted tones, mirroring the desolation in their hearts. The air grew colder, a chill seeping in through the old windows, or perhaps it was just the icy grip of their own shattered expectations. Every sound from outside, a distant dog barking, the faint rumble of a passing car, seemed unnaturally loud, jarring against the heavy stillness inside, emphasizing the isolation of their exposed guilt. The very dust motes which had danced playfully earlier now seemed to drift listlessly, reflecting the defeated spirits in the room. "You see," I continued, my voice now a steady, calm river flowing through the desolate landscape of their despair, unwavering in its conviction, "it wasn't just the grand scheme, the audacious plot to sell my house and manage my life that led us to this point. It was the accumulation of all these small things, the casual disrespect, the undermining of my intelligence, the dismissal of my feelings. The constant insinuation that I was becoming a burden, a problem to be solved rather than a person to be cherished. Each tiny stone of disrespect piled upon another until it became an insurmountable, impenetrable wall between us, brick by painful brick. My gaze lingered on each of them for a moment, absorbing their individual reactions of shock, anger, and profound loss, trying to discern if any true understanding flickered within them. I had hoped, I confessed, a genuine note of sorrow entering my voice, a testament to my enduring capacity for compassion, that one of you, at least one, would have chosen a different path. That when presented with the undeniable truth, you might have felt genuine remorse, not just for being caught, but for the profound hurt you caused, for the love you squandered. But I see now that was a misplaced hope, a naive wish for an outcome that their actions had already precluded. Jeline, her face a mask of bitter resentment, finally pushed her chair back with a harsh scrape against the polished floorboards. The sound was abrasive, rupturing the fragile atmosphere, an outward expression of her inner fury. "So that's it then?" she snarled, her voice tight with suppressed rage, barely controlled. "You're really going to throw your own family out, after everything? For some old biddy and some charities? You'd rather give it all to strangers than your own blood." Her words dripped with a toxic mix of accusation and entitlement, a final desperate attempt to shame me into submission. "Jeline," I said, my voice hardening, devoid of any warmth, "I have given you every opportunity to mend fences, to show respect, to behave as true family. But you have consistently chosen a path of deceit and self-interest, prioritizing your greed above all else. My decision is not for some old biddy or some charities. My decision is for my own peace of mind, for my own dignity, and for the fundamental principle that respect, once lost, is incredibly difficult, almost impossible to regain. And as for strangers, dear, many of those charities have done more for genuine human kindness than you have ever conceived." Bernadette, seeing Jeline's rising temper, suddenly stood up as well, her initial shock now completely replaced by a cold, desperate anger, her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides. "You'll regret this, Aunt Me. You'll be alone. Who will look after you when you truly can't cope? You think that Mrs. Gable will be there every single day, wiping your brow and fetching your tea? She has her own life, her own family. You'll be utterly alone, and then you'll understand what regret truly means." Her words were meant to be a vicious threat, a dire warning of the lonely, helpless future I supposedly faced, but they only served to underscore, with chilling clarity, their true selfish motives. I looked at Bernadette, a sad, almost pitying smile touching my lips. "Bernadette, for the past 6 months, even while you were ostensibly helping me, I have never felt more profoundly alone. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who pretend to care, who feign affection, but who secretly plot against you, who chip away at your very spirit, is far more profound than any physical solitude. And as for coping, I have already made comprehensive arrangements. I have a wonderful team of caregivers, vetted and trusted, who will assist me as needed, professionals who operate with integrity and genuine care. And yes, Mrs. Gable will continue to be my dear friend, as will Mr. Henderson, and many others in this loving community who value genuine connection and steadfast friendship over mere financial gain or opportunistic inheritance. My chosen family, dear, will always be there for me. Marcus, the last to react, slowly rose from his chair, his shoulders slumped, his face pale and drawn, a picture of utter defeat. He didn't speak, but his eyes, filled with a raw, desperate shame, met mine for a fleeting moment. For a brief instant, I saw a flicker of the innocent, impressionable boy he once was, before greed and the toxic influence of his sisters had twisted his moral compass. That flicker quickly faded, overshadowed by the painful reality of his actions and the profound regret that now consumed him. Now, I stated, my voice firm, unwavering, indicating the envelope still on the table, a clear sign of the finality of this moment. I believe we have said all there is to say. You have your final accounting, the numerical testament to my past generosity and your current forfeiture. Please take them. And then I must insist that you leave this house, this haven, immediately. And do not contact me again, unless it is exclusively through my lawyer, Mr. Davies, who will handle any further communications. Jeline snatched her envelope with a violent gesture, her fingers crushing the papers even further as if to destroy the evidence of her loss. Her eyes were slits of pure, unadulterated hatred, burning with a cold fury that chilled the very air. Fine, she spat, her voice barely controlled a venomous hiss. Fine, you want to be alone, Aunt Me, be alone. See how you like it when there's no one around to plot against you. She turned sharply, her body rigid with indignation, grabbed her expensive purse from the floor with a swift, angry motion and marched towards the front door, her heels clicking angrily, aggressively on the polished wood. Each step was an exclamation point on her fury, echoing through the now empty hall, a sound of bitter resentment. The sharp, metallic click of the doorknob turning, followed by the loud, reverberating thud of the door slamming shut, resonated through the old house, shaking the very pictures on the wall, a sound of violent finality of an abrupt, brutal severing. Bernadette, seeing Jeline's dramatic exit, hesitated for a moment, her gaze darting frantically between the remaining envelope and my unwavering, implacable expression. Her face was a volatile mixture of fear, anger, and a deep-seated frustration that her carefully laid plans had gone so spectacularly awry. She knew in that gut-wrenching moment that the game was truly and irrevocably over. With a frustrated huff, a sound of utter exasperation, she grabbed her envelope, shoving it carelessly into her large, stylish bag, the papers rustling indignantly. "You'll be sorry," she muttered darkly, her voice low and resentful, a barely audible threat as she stubbornly avoided my eyes, unable to face the truth reflected there. Then, with a dramatic swish of her coat, she followed Jeline out, leaving the front door ajar as if to emphasize her hasty, disdainful departure and utter disregard for my home, allowing a cold draft to sweep in, a physical representation of the chill she left behind. Only Marcus remained. He stood there, trembling visibly, his head bowed, the crumpled envelope still clutched in his hand, a testament to his shattered hopes. The silence was even deeper now, punctuated only by his ragged breathing, the shallow gasps of a soul in anguish. He looked utterly broken, like a child who had finally understood the terrifying magnitude of his wrongdoing, the irreversible consequences of his choices. For a long, agonizing moment, neither of us spoke. The last rays of twilight filtered through the window, painting the edges of the room in hues of soft gray and melancholic violet, as if the very light itself was mourning the fractured bonds, the irreversible damage. "Marcus," I finally said, my voice softer than I had intended, a faint tremor of my own sorrow touching the words. "I truly wish things had been different for you. I had always hoped you would rise above the influence of your sisters, that you would find your own moral compass, your own sense of integrity, unswayed by the allure of easy money." He slowly lifted his head, his eyes brimming with tears again, a fresh deluge of anguish. "I'm so sorry, Aunt Me," he whispered, his voice barely audible, choked with genuine anguish, raw and ragged. This apology, unlike his earlier desperate, self-serving pleas, felt different. It felt raw, unpracticed, heartfelt, as if some small, deeply buried part of his conscience had finally broken through the thick layers of self-deception and greed. "I really am, I never wanted it to go this far," they kept pushing. "And I was weak, I needed the money. I just kept telling myself it was a good idea, that you wouldn't mind." My heart, though still aching from the profound betrayal, softened a fraction, a fragile tendril of compassion reaching out. "Needing money is one thing, Marcus. There are honest ways to earn it through hard work and diligence, and honest people to ask for help, people who offer support without expectation of exploitation. But conspiring to exploit the perceived vulnerability of an elderly relative, to systematically dismantle her autonomy, to plan to strip her of her home and her dignity, that is another matter entirely. That crosses a line no amount of debt, no amount of financial desperation can ever justify. That is a betrayal of the deepest kind." He nodded slowly, tears now streaming freely down his face, soaking his shirt. He didn't offer excuses, didn't try to blame his sisters again, didn't try to rationalize his actions. He simply stood there, absorbing the crushing truth of my words, the unbearable weight of his guilt, allowing it to fully sink in. I hope, I continued, my voice gentle but firm, that one day in the quiet solitude of your own conscience, you will truly understand the gravity of what you have done, the pain you have inflicted, and that you will use this painful, humiliating experience as a profound lesson to choose a better path in life. For your own sake, Marcus, and for the sake of the good man I believe you still have the potential to be. He nodded again, unable to speak, his chest heaving with silent sobs. He slowly turned, his movements heavy and listless, his head still bowed, and walked towards the open door that Bernadette had left ajar. He paused at the threshold, glancing back at me one last time, his eyes full of a lingering sorrow and profound regret, a haunted look that I knew would stay with me for a long time. This time he didn't slam the door. He gently pulled it shut, the soft, barely audible click a stark contrast to Jalene's furious, resonating exit, a quieter, more sorrowful farewell. And then I was alone. The house, which had been so full of tension, anger, and confrontation just moments before, now settled into a profound, almost eerie quiet. The fading light outside cast long, melancholic shadows across the familiar furniture, blurring the edges of the room. I could still smell the faint, acrid scent of their fear and frustration, mingling with the lingering aroma of my herbal tea, long since gone cold in its cup. The silence was absolute, save for the rhythmic tick-tock of the antique grandfather clock in the hall, a steady, comforting heartbeat against the stillness. It was a silence that was at once crushing in its finality and profoundly liberating in its newfound peace. I sat there for a long time, the heavy quiet wrapping around me like a thick, comforting blanket, absorbing the echoes of the storm that had just passed. My hands, which had been clutching the arms of my chair with white-knuckled intensity, slowly relaxed, their tension easing. A deep, shuddering breath escaped my lips, carrying with it the last vestiges of the tension that had gripped me for months, for years even, a constant undercurrent of unease. My eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail with renewed appreciation. The worn velvet of the armchair, soft and familiar beneath my fingertips, the slightly faded tapestry on the wall depicting a serene pastoral scene, the beloved collection of delicate porcelain figurines on the mantelpiece, each one a treasured memory from a different time, a different chapter of my life. This was my home, my sanctuary, a repository of a lifetime of love, laughter, and cherished memories. And it was safe. It was truly mine again. A wave of profound exhaustion washed over me, the kind that settles deep into your bones after a long, arduous, emotional battle. But beneath the weariness, there was a growing sense of peace, a quiet, resolute triumph. I had done what needed to be done, however painful the process. I had protected myself fiercely and uncompromisingly. I had honored my own dignity and my life's legacy. And in doing so, I had perhaps inadvertently given my nieces and nephew a chance, however slim, to confront their own failings, to truly see the ugliness of their actions. It was a harsh lesson indeed, delivered with a heavy heart, but sometimes the most profound and necessary lessons are cloaked in the bitterest truths. I slowly rose from my chair, my old joints protesting slightly after the long ordeal, giving a soft creak as I pushed myself up. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if a great oppressive weight had been lifted from its very foundations, allowing it to breathe again. The air, though still cool with the onset of evening, no longer felt heavy or oppressive. It felt fresh, clean, purified by the emotional storm that had just passed, leaving behind a profound sense of clarity. I walked over to the windows, gazing out into the deepening twilight. The last vestiges of sunset painted the western sky in spectacular streaks of fiery orange, soft rose, and deep violet, a beautiful, calming tableau against the darkening horizon. A lone robin sang its evening song from a branch in the old oak tree, a sweet, clear melody piercing the quiet, a gentle serenade to the evening's unfolding peace. My thoughts drifted to Mrs. Gable, my steadfast, unwavering friend. I would call her later, perhaps share a cup of tea on the phone, and tell her that her quiet, gentle advice had indeed proven invaluable, that her insights had been a guiding light in my darkest hours. I thought of Mr. Henderson, the gardener, whose genuine care for my property, whose honest labor and respectful manner, far outweighed any empty familial obligation. I knew now with absolute, unshakable certainty that true family, true friends, are not always those bound by blood, by the arbitrary ties of genetics, but those bound by kindness, honesty, and unwavering, heartfelt respect. They were the ones who truly enriched my life, not drained it. This experience, though deeply painful and scarring in some ways, had paradoxically sharpened my vision, clarified my priorities, and revealed the true contours of my life. It had shown me the true colors of those I had loved and trusted, forcing me to confront uncomfortable truths. But it had also reminded me of the enduring strength within myself, a wellspring of resilience I hadn't realized was so deep. I had believed in my instincts, even when they whispered uncomfortable, terrifying truths, and I had acted upon them, even when it required immense courage and a painful severing of ties. That I realized was a profound victory, a reclaiming of my authentic self. I walked into my kitchen, the familiar scent of herbs and spices, of baked goods and strong coffee, a comforting, familiar embrace. I put the kettle on, its soft, gentle hum a soothing counterpoint to the quiet of the house, a promise of warmth and solace. I would make myself a fresh cup of chamomile tea tonight, something soothing to calm my spirit and gently usher in the night. As I waited for the water to boil, I looked around the kitchen, seeing it with new, appreciative eyes. Every chipped mug, every worn wooden cutting board, every well-loved utensil held a story, a memory of countless meals shared, of hearty laughter, of quiet conversations, of a life richly lived. This was not just a house, it was a home vibrant with the echoes of a rich and full existence, and it was still mine. Every stick of furniture, every book on the shelf, every memory etched into its walls belonged to me by right and by love. The feeling of ownership, not just of the physical bricks and mortar, but of my own life, my own choices, my own future, swelled within me, warm and potent. It was a potent, empowering sensation, a feeling of absolute sovereignty over my own destiny. I had faced the beasts, as Marcus had called them, the predators disguised as family, and I had emerged not unscathed, for the wounds were deep, but stronger, wiser, and more resolutely myself than ever before. The future, though it might hold its own challenges, now felt open, unburdened by the insidious machinations of others, filled with possibility and a renewed sense of purpose. The kettle began to whistle, a cheerful, insistent sound, pulling me back to the comforting present. I poured the hot water over the fragrant chamomile, watching the delicate petals swirl in the cup, releasing their soothing essence. The steam rose, carrying with it the promise of warmth and comfort, a gentle balm for a weary soul. I cradled the warm mug in my hands, feeling the gentle heat seep into my fingertips, a tangible reminder of the simple, honest pleasures that still filled my life, the small moments of beauty that endure. I walked back into the living room, drawn by the last glow of twilight, now a soft, ethereal gray. The room was bathed in this hushed, gentle light, no longer ominous or a battleground but serene, a sanctuary. I sat down in my favorite armchair, the one that had witnessed so much, held so many stories, and took a slow, deep sip of my tea. The warmth spread through me, calming my nerves, settling my heart, filling the emptiness left by the departed. The journey had been long, the path fraught with emotional peril, the cost immense, but I had reached my destination, peace, a peace hard won, dearly bought with courage and sorrow, but utterly invaluable, a treasure beyond measure. I closed my eyes for a moment, savoring the quiet, the warmth, the profound sense of having reclaimed my life, of having truly come home to myself. The old house breathed around me, a comforting presence, no longer a battleground but a haven, a beacon of resilience. This, my dear friends, is the true meaning of resilience. It is not about never falling, but about rising again, stronger and wiser, each time life tries to knock you down. It is about protecting your spirit, honoring your truth, and never allowing anyone to diminish your worth, no matter how intimately they are connected by blood. And sometimes, perhaps most painfully, it is about having the courage to say enough is enough, and to draw a clear, unwavering line, not in anger but in profound self-preservation. Thank you for joining me for this difficult but ultimately liberating story on Aunt Me's Fireside Stories. If you found strength in Aunt Me's resolve, or if this story resonated with you, please consider giving us a like and subscribing to our channel for more tales of resilience and wisdom. Let's go back for a moment, back to the town meeting, deep into its fifth hour. The air was thick with tension, and old man Fitzwilliam, red-faced, had just finished shouting his objections to Aunt Me's plan for the old mill pond. He called it foolish, a waste, and a challenge to tradition. Me sat quietly listening, her gaze steady. When the mayor called her name, Me rose slowly, her back straight. She walked to the podium with quiet strength. "Friends, neighbors," she began, her voice soft but clear. "I understand your concerns. Change is hard, but sometimes change is necessary, especially when it helps us remember who we truly are." She paused. Fitzwilliam grumbled, but Me continued. "This old mill pond isn't just a pond, it's a piece of our history, a history that holds a promise forgotten by time." Whispers filled the room. Me reached into her old leather satchel and pulled out a rolled-up piece of parchment, yellowed with age. "For years," she said, holding the scroll carefully, "my grandmother kept this safe. It's the original charter for our town, signed on Oct. 12, 1888 by the founding families. It outlines our duties to each other and to the land." She unrolled it, revealing faded script. "And right here," she pointed to a section, "it states that the mill pond, our Mill Pond Creek, is to be preserved as common ground for reflection and education for all generations to come." It also details that 10% of any profits from the mill's operation were to be set aside for its perpetual care. A fund, my friends, started with $500 in 1890 and growing quietly in a trust at the First National Bank for over 100 years. A collective gasp. Fitzwilliam's jaw dropped. No one knew about this fund. Me looked at him. "This fund," she explained, "today holds a value of just over $2 million. More than enough to restore the mill pond and create our community garden, just as my proposal suggests, without a single cent from your taxes." The silence now was pure astonishment. The hidden ace, it wasn't just money, it was their history, a forgotten promise. Me hadn't fought with anger, she fought with truth and heritage. Her plan wasn't new, it was ancient, woven into their town's founding. The mayor cleared his throat. "Miss Thompson," he said, in his voice, "this changes everything." And it did. Objections vanished. Fitzwilliam, humbled, stammered an apology. The faces in the crowd now shone with understanding and pride. Aunt Me, with her quiet determination, had not just saved the mill pond. She had reminded them all of their shared past, their common purpose. It was a victory of silent, enduring wisdom passed down through generations. The liberating truth had set them all free. Thank you for joining me for this heartwarming story on Nunny Stories. If Nunny Quiet Strength resonated with you, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more tales of resilience and wisdom.